So we can see that in Europe, the framework is quite heterogeneous. We have common directives, but then they are implemented in different ways in the different countries. And also there is not a specific directive on light pollution, whereas there are the light pollution is brought in different directives related to biodiversity, to impact assessment, and so on. So it is an aspect that is considered within a more general view that is to be taken into account. So we have different ways to approach the problem, starting from common directives based on the country that we are. And in order to perform the evaluation in the pilot sites, we have to take into account these differences and operate according to the regulatory framework. We hope to provide you a way to perform the evaluation according to a common approach based on what is available now in literature and in the past experience of other European projects. These are the main tier that we've been given by the local action Escaton Valli Valdesi. So we know that this assessment will be made in order to provide indication for mitigating light pollution in one site. In another site, there will be activities aimed at increasing opportunities for dark sky tourism. Also, in another pilot, another tier will be dealing with the engagement of stakeholders with regard to light pollution and the attractiveness of dark sky in presence of cultural heritage. And finally, the measure of the anthropogenic effects and impacts on the ecosystem and biodiversity. So quite different goals, quite different paths that should be all linked by a common way of proceeding in their activities. And to do that, we can refer to these approaches. The first one could be the MICE framework, or the one provided by the IPEES, or also the Natural Capital Protocol. But I tell you, there are many others. And today we want to present you a simplification of these approaches, because, for instance, if we go to the MICE approach, it's quite complex, and it's very focused on the technical aspect, and does not take into account, for instance, stakeholders, and many of you, some of you will have to deal with stakeholders. So that could be a guideline for the assessment, but maybe that it lack of indication for the stakeholder engagement. The IPBES framework instead provides indication on how to engage the stakeholders and to bring them into the analysis with an active role, for instance. But still, as its own complexity. I'm not saying that you don't have to use this approach. I'm saying just that this is very complex, and maybe for the first time that someone uses this, is not the easiest methodology to consider. Then there is the Natural Capital Protocol, that is another standard that allows to include all the parts of that will be considered by the different pilots, and it is articulated into 4 stages. The stage 1 is related to the definition of the objectives of the analysis, also on the engagement of the stakeholders to take into account their instances. Then there's the stage 2 that is focused on defining the scope of the assessment, and also to define what to assess in terms of impacts, but also dependencies, for instance, astrotourism depends on dark sky, and so on. Then the stage 3 is related to the phase where we measure and value, for instance, the ecosystem services. Stage 4 is the last part that after analyzing the results of the stage 3 allows us to take decision, take action, and also to disclose the results of the analysis and the action that have to be implemented. But what we propose you is to simplify all of this and to refer to this cycle. So the first phase, where you will be focused on the identification of stakeholders and their engagement. I say this because it is important to include in the analysis the point of view of the people that may be affected by the results of the analysis, to prevent conflicts, for instance, but also to increase the detail and the capability of the analysis to focus on all the aspects that are considered important for the community with regard to activities, actions to be implemented in order to guarantee dark sky quality, for instance. Also, with the stakeholders and the technician and all the equip that you will include in this activity, you will be asked to define the objectives. Part of them are already defined with the 4 topics that I shown you before, and then to select the methods that have to be used for the ecosystem service assessment, and last but not least, which kind of ecosystem services you have to assess. Someone of you will be focused on biodiversity, and so probably regulation ecosystem services. Someone will be focused on cultural ecosystem services, and so on. Once you have defined objective, scope, and methodologies, you will proceed with the assessment. Once you have proceeded with when we finished with the assessment, you'll have results to be interpreted, and based on this interpretation that is important to share with the stakeholders, you will define actions to correct things that are not going well and to increase the possibility of having a good quality of the environment. And you'll have to share also these results publicly, possibly, through the dissemination and all the activities related to the communication phase of your project. To give you some examples of the things that you can choose in order to, for instance, work with stakeholders, there are some examples here where you can see that the use of net maps, for instance, it's a useful tool to identify the problems, the topics of your analysis, and to see the relationship between these different elements. Then you can weight these elements using multi-criteria decision analysis, for instance. And it would be great if you can also represent these results in a map, because maps, especially when we talk about ecosystems, allow to better clarify, for instance, where are the problems, how the relevance of these problems, and also to have an idea about the location of area where these problems are found. Often is it necessary to go through a iterative process. So sometimes after the first round of activities, it is good to go back and see and check with the stakeholders if all the information have been well understood and properly handled. Regarding to the assessment, nowadays we have different models that run on PC. It is difficult to go through all of them because it would require a day or even more. But so I gave you this publication here, and in this publication that is quite recent, you will find a list, a very comprehensive list of available models for assessing different ecosystem services. So you will be able to choose the right model based on the ecosystem services that you want to assess. This model produce maps like the one that are shown at the bottom right of the slide. As I said, these maps allows you to indicate where is the problem, how relevant it is, and so on, and helps to take decision based on the location of the different elements of your analysis. But these models require a phase of data collection. So data collection is there's not one way to collect data, because it depends on the ecosystem service that you are considering and a model that you are using, for instance. So there are different approaches. If you are dealing with cultural ecosystem services, often you rely on survey online or through participatory groups, focus groups, that you will decide how to do that. Whereas if you look at the dark sky quality, you can have specific sensor to measure the brightness of the sky during the night. If you have to measure and monitor nocturnal fauna, for instance, photo devices can be used to do monitoring and collect data related to biodiversity. And the thing that I consider very interesting, and it's good for the engagement of stakeholder, is citizen science. Many of you already know about this approach, so I don't go too much in the don't need to explain too much about this. But with the technology that we have, like mobile phone, you can prepare forms to be completed by the non-expert user when they are on the field, and you can train them to collect data. This allows you to collect more data to engage the stakeholders. You just have to be careful about the data quality, but also these kind of checks are easy to be made, and I think that it's a good approach to be followed. As I said, in these years have been developed many tools, approaches based on different context, different problems, different ecosystem services, and so on. So in this slide, I gave you some indication of 3 platforms where you can find very comprehensive databases. You can browse them, and you will find a lot of possibilities. Probably too many. I don't know. But one is the one that is provided by the Natural Capital Coalition, and is the Natural Capital Toolkit. You'll have tools for measuring, assessing, and during your analysis. The same you can find in this website, OPLA. Many of you probably already know this. And the same, you can find methods for modeling, for collecting data, for engaging stakeholders, and so on. And finally, the Esmeralda project, that is another European project, provided this database. And again, here you can see, you will be able to find a lot of tools and methodologies, and also in all these three databases, you will find also a lot of case studies. So you can see if things that you have to be implemented in your pilot have been already dealt with in somewhere else, and see how they proceeded just to save time and to make the most of former experiences.